Well, good afternoon and welcome back. This is episode 30, titled Starting My List of Badass Things, My Wife's Hearing Loss is My Fault, and the Definition of Teamwork. I'm starting to create a list of badass things, so I'll keep a running tab on the list as I continue. First, I'll start with a friend who skipped school in second grade, which means he was about 7 years old when he decided to do that. That's badass. I have to see the Sternberg movie, The Devil is a Woman, with Marlene Dietrich. I have not seen it before. We tend to believe that if the devil exists, it must be a man, but not in this movie, which is based on a French novel from 1898. In Susan Sontag's essay, Notes on Camp, refer to this movie along with The Maltese Falcon as camp movies. Either way, The Maltese Falcon is one of my favorite movies of all time, so both of these movies are badass. My wife has been losing her hearing for quite a few years now, and invariably I'll be speaking to her, asking her a question, and she does not respond. I know that she's tired of me, and if she could think of it, she could blame much of her hearing loss on me and just claim that she's exhausted by my nonsense after nearly 4 decades of listening to me. She has essentially blocked me out now, and I understand. I'm a carrier of hearing loss, especially after all these years, and I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. Teamwork is a lot of people doing what I say, and I realize that communication is a problem, but I refuse to discuss this with anyone. A close friend of mine that I had when I was in elementary and middle school years became a serious drug addict, which eventually evolved into robbery and then murder. This is still a difficult thing to reckon with. It haunted me for a few years when I found out that he had murdered a man and woman in Vermont for who knows what. He was an intelligent guy who made some horrible choices, and I'm sure that the drugs were a major part of it. And oddly enough, the both of us sat down one winter's night in 1965 and wrote a letter about our fifth grade teacher, and we submitted it to Wonderama, a kids show that was on Channel 5 in New York that was hosted by Sonny Fox. Well, we got the call a couple of months later, and our letter was selected to be on the show with our teacher. How proud we were, and it was definitely an exciting day and night, and we had to wait a long time to be on the air. I don't think we were on the air until like 8 o'clock at night. And our teacher, who was such a wonderful man, was also so proud. Be that as it may, I still think of that day every now and then and wonder how my friend took such a wrong turn in his life. If you ever get an opportunity, read the article Denial Makes the World Go Round from the New York Times article on November 20th, 2007. It was a very interesting article. And in this article, you'll understand why the word denial is greatly misunderstood and why it's such a critical tool in everyday life. Basically, if you can't deny things, you're going to have a hard time getting through life, especially dealing with people and relationships. My wife once asked me several years ago what I was going to get her for Mother's Day, and I replied by saying, "You're not my mother." Yeah, that went over really big with her. She has never found anything that I say to be humorous, understandably. I have a theory that the tougher you are, the more you suffer internally and or cry. But of course, I have no evidence to back this up, and I don't believe in most research. Most of it I find is market manipulation created to benefit itself or prove their point. Hey, I lived through the 1960s and 70s. We don't trust much. There's nothing like the public bathroom with one toilet, and you sure as hell don't want to touch and lift the seat, but you also don't want to pee on the seat. There's no way out of this dilemma unless you wear gloves. Recently, while volunteering at the Connecticut Food Bank one morning, I was introduced to some of the other volunteers. One man was introduced to me as a guy who gave up his Hollywood career to do this, and I responded, "This is a better place. Hollywood is a hellhole, not to mention that much of California is on fire right now." Of course, this was back a few months ago. And surprisingly enough, he smiled and agreed. Lastly, we need to desperately address global warming pronto, or it's going to address us, and it's going to be quite rude. We're talking total devastation, chaos, water shortages, uncontrollable fires, which we're already seeing. There's no denying this. It's very real. And don't think for a second that Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson are going to save us with the delusions of occupying another planet. It's a pipe dream. Wake up, people. We're all in this together, and there are no other options for inhabiting another planet. The other planets don't want anything to do with us. We've already fucked up the only planet we've had, and we have no idea how to make another planet livable for the human species. And as we continue to live through COVID-19 pandemic here in 2021, I especially appreciated how Lois reacted to Peter in a recent episode of Family Guy, which is one of my all-time favorite shows because they pull no punches and take no prisoners. When he was told that he had to work from home, he was naturally with Lois all day, and she told him that the reason our marriage survived is that you were away from home more than you were here. Same for me. That's the only way a marriage can survive. She was right. A credit, of course, to the writers of the series. A marriage or relationship needs a certain distance to endure. Most people have a way of driving each other bonkers when you don't have an escape route or a certain space and breath from each other. My wife and I know this quite well. The last 2 years or so have been a test for us. And nothing against Mary or myself. I don't think we're that unique in admitting that we're not easy to live with. Personally, I think it's very human. There's nothing better for people than a bit of distance, solitude, and room to move. And lastly, for episode 13, my doctor recently told me that I'm in good health, but I need to eat more sugar and monosodium glutamate. And I will stop here. See you soon.